Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Go Big or Go Home. I am Old Man Troy, joined by Kid Christmas. How are you doing today, my friend? I know you're excited today.
I am excited. Today is the first show this year that it's going to be one of my favorite shows that we do all year, and next week's show will be one of my favorite shows we do all year, and the next week, and the next week. Because we're finally truly talking only football, and we're starting on this show, as you listeners know, since you clicked on it. We are previewing 4 of the Big Ten football teams for the upcoming 2019 season. So I am excited, and also, as you know, if you clicked on the link, we're talking about Illinois, Minnesota, Nebraska, and Iowa this week. Next week, we will get into the top 3 teams from the Big Ten West. And then I guess 2 weeks from now, we'll move over to the East, break down those bottom 4, and then go over the top 3 on another show. But basically, it's football season. We're previewing these teams, not crazily in-depth, but as in-depth as we will go on these single teams.
15 minutes each.
Yeah, that's our plan. So I plan on getting timestamps for each of these teams as we go along, so that listeners, if you only care about Minnesota football, you can skip ahead to Minnesota where it's time-stamped somewhere on the description or wherever, and you can just listen to that little 15-minute, however long-ish segment on the Gophers if you so choose. So,
well, and the old man's going to talk about Minnesota this year.
There we go. Woo!
I figure the year-long jinx is over.
Mm-hmm.
Time to break my silence and actually talk about the Gophers. We'll see how it works. Can't be any worse.
That's true. That's very true. Also, 2 years ago, we started the kind of go big or go home locks of the week for college football, and each week we kind of pick out a game. We try to pick out a game. Sometimes we don't. We both have to agree on a game against the spread involving a Big Ten team. And 2 years ago, I think we were undefeated. Like we went 6 or 7-0. We didn't start it at the start of the year, unfortunately. But we were
last year we were defeated.
Last year we were defeated. We were terrible last year. So this year, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? But that's a month away. The regular season for the Big Ten starts, I think the first game that I have seen on team schedules is the 30th, which is a Friday, and then a lot of these teams start the 31st, which is truly the first Saturday for college football. But literally later this month, we are talking Big Ten football and going over games. So that will be fun as well.
You know what else is fun is driving on the Parkway on a Tuesday afternoon after a meeting.
Sounds very fun.
I have to say that. And the reason I say that is that normally, I always do the show on the way home. But the car isn't fixed yet, and it is hotter than grandma's soup in my car. So I'm doing the show with the windows open. So if you hear any loud noises, bangs, rap songs, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's all out there today. But I have to, otherwise I will stop talking because I will just whittle away while I sweat. Let's move on, youngster. Time, football time, college football, Big Ten, here we come.
Yes. Very quickly, before we get into the 4 teams, Deshaun Jones, he had an injury, I think it was today. It was either today or yesterday during practice. And Deshaun Jones was a freshman wide receiver, quote-unquote, for Maryland a year ago, and he had 7 total touchdowns. I remember in the first game that Maryland played last year, his first collegiate game, he scored 3 touchdowns. He threw a touchdown pass. He ran. He had a rushing score. And, again, he's a wide receiver. Typically, and so he obviously caught a touchdown pass as well, but he made his mark on his very first collegiate game. He had a nice season a year ago for Maryland. Maryland's got a new head coach in Loxley, the former assistant under Saban in Alabama. Now he's at Maryland, and I think Jones tore his ACL. It was either today or yesterday, so very unfortunate news for Maryland football, for fans that were hoping for a little bit of a reboot kind of for the program and kind of to get things jump-started. Having Deshaun Jones would have been nice. So much for that this year. So, sour news there. The other thing I wanted to bring up as well, where we'll be talking about near Maryland in a couple weeks when we move over to the Big Ten East. more so. But also the coaches poll came out this past week, and Troy, I know how much you care about these preseason polls, especially the coaches poll, which really nobody goes by. But I just wanted to make a quick note that Ohio State led all Big Ten teams at number 5, which I think is somewhat interesting. Michigan is the assumed favorite. They're number 7. But in total, 7 Big Ten teams in the top 25. And that's more teams than ACC, Big 12, Pac-12, SEC. Doesn't matter which conference you want to choose. Big Ten had the most top 25 teams. Again, it's the coaches poll. It's the preseason poll. It doesn't mean anything. But it goes to show that this league is as deep as any league out there. That's all really I wanted to say about it.
It's respect. It's respect, and I really don't care that there's 7 in the preseason coaches poll.
Right.
Big deal.
Yeah.
I would, I don't know where Maryland falls in the overall poll, but now they lost one of their key players. This poll probably came out before any of the camps started. So That's just an example.
Right.
You got injuries. You haven't even played a game yet.
Yep.
And so you know how I feel about polls altogether, youngster. I mean, they're totally useless. It's somebody else's opinion on a team that they know nothing about other than what they read and what they see. Now, if you play against them,
right,
that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
And if you're a beat writer for them, that's a little bit different. But you look at all the voters that are out there for these polls. I mean, is there a coach in Arizona that really knows all the ins and outs of Minnesota football?
Right.
That coach probably can't even name the head coach at Minnesota.
Yeah.
So I'm just going with that there. I mean, it's great. It shows respect. Big Ten has respect to the coaches across the country. It's awesome. But as far as the rankings go, like you said, Kevin, Ohio State ahead of Michigan. If you're basing it off prior history, sure. But I really think Michigan right now is better. If you're doing a true poll in the preseason, if you're doing it based on paper, Michigan's better than Ohio State on paper right now.
Yeah.
I would give the edge to Michigan. So right there, it's already skewed in my mind. Like, here's another bogus coaches poll. What do you're just going off prior history. And Ohio State has dominated Michigan, so we're going to rank them higher than Michigan. It's not true this year on paper.
Right.
Now, again, the games have to be played, but this is a preseason poll, and so you're telling me that, and right there, this poll has lost all validity to me.
Yeah. Also, it should be noted, Nebraska finished 26th in terms of votes, and so it's interesting, coaches vote on this. Scott Frost purposely left his team out of the top 25 to say, hey, all these other people may think we're going to win the Big Ten West, but I don't. I'm not going to put us in the top 25. Look, we're not in the top 25 when it's all said and done, so go out and prove it. So, I mean, if you're a coach, and I was talking to this with a coworker, we write about Big Ten football during the season, and it's like, if you're Indiana's coach, either you're putting Indiana number 1 in the coaches poll every week to try and boost yourself, or just leave yourself out. What are you actually going to go through team by team by team and truly diagnose, wait a minute, is Northwestern actually better than Wisconsin? Or, who cares? Either you're putting your team number 1, in my opinion, or you're leaving them off to send a message and to hope that you can get your guys to play hungrier and prove something. To me, those are the only 2 options as a coach, anyway. So, anyway, just wanted to mention that. 7 Big Ten teams in the coaches poll, but again, it's the preseason coaches poll. So, I think it just goes to show that coaches around the country understand that the Big Ten has a number of really good teams. That's really all I want to take from it. So, starting with Illinois, finally, we will get into season previews here. Again, like Troy said, we want to keep these to 15 minutes each. Some of these teams we may not even get to 15 minutes, depending on how the conversation goes. But for Illinois, a year ago, they finished, and again, we're starting in the Big Ten West here. We're starting with the bottom 4 teams in the Big Ten West, moving our way up just in the division. So next week we'll talk
starting with Illinois?
Yeah, starting with Illinois.
Preview over.
Preview you over. So Illinois, 4-8 a year ago, 2-7 in the Big Ten, and it's Lovie Smith's fourth year now. And so this is the third year Troy and I are doing Go Big or Go Home. This is the third year we were talking about football. For basketball, it'll be the fourth, which is crazy. But third year we're talking about football, and we can remember when Lovie Smith was basically just starting. And it's like, hey, the team's really young. They're going to be bad. Okay, that's fine. And like a couple years ago, we're still young. Are going to be bad. Okay. Last year, young and still bad. And coming into this year, it's like, when are you not going to be young? When are you going to show improvement?
Let me jump in here, youngster, because you brought up a big point. It's really all I wanted to say about Illinois is Lovie Smith, when he got hired, we thought, this could be a good hire for Illinois. Good football coach, good X's and O's guys. We'll see how he can do recruiting. It's Illinois. You're not going to have a top 10 recruiting class.
Sure.
But he went out and he recruited. And like you said, young, last year was the head scratcher because it's like, okay, this is your third recruiting class. And I understand as a coach, you're always trying to recruit better players. But you now have guys that have been in your system for 2 years and you're starting the freshman recruit?
Right.
It makes no sense. Did you really recruit that bad in years 1 and 2? And if you did, you shouldn't have a job anymore.
Right.
I can give you a pass on year 1. I really can. You're going out, you're learning recruiting, blah, blah, blah. Year 2, though, you should be tuned in. Like, this is my philosophy. This is our identity. This is what I want. And go get those kids. But then in year 3, to go recruit guys and throw them right into the starting lineup, that made no sense to me at all, youngster. And if their opening day comes up and I'm seeing freshmen start this year, I might be calling for Lovie's head. I mean,
at quarterback, Troy. At quarterback, I just want to jump in. They're expected to have a true freshman play quarterback, and he's a top 100 recruit. Like
I'll tell you what, though, youngster. On a quarterback, I can give a pass. But look at that team last year. What they start 7 freshmen. Something like that?
It was something like that. Yeah.
So if they go out and do that again this year, that's insane. A quarterback is a little different position, though, youngster, because every year the recruiting class is going to be different. There could be a stud freshman or a guy, not even a stud, could be a 4-star guy that comes in that's better than your junior.
And you're
going to play the best player at quarterback. I understand that.
Yeah. This guy is a 4-star recruit. He's a top 100 recruit. He's supposed to be good. So I get it. They also lost a grad transfer quarterback. That also happens. Guys will transfer. So, just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, if I see a bunch of freshmen though starting, Kevin, I mean this program in my mind in 3 years has shown no progress.
Yeah.
None. It's like every year we're starting from scratch, and you can't do that in college football. I mean, college basketball maybe because you got one-and-done guys.
Right.
College football, even Nick Saban, even the power schools, they're not throwing all these freshmen onto the field and say, hey, let's go win a national championship.
Yeah.
The studs are playing that are freshmen. But look at the major programs, Kevin. Not a lot of freshmen start. It's hard to find the field.
The oldest.
I mean, yeah,
the oldest
you're a top 50 recruit, but that doesn't mean you're going to Ohio State and starting.
Right.
You might sit on the bench for 2 years.
Yeah. There's a top 20 overall recruit, number 2 wide receiver recruit, 5-star guy at Ohio State, and Ryan Day said today that he's battling for a backup position. That's what he's trying to fight for, is a backup role. And he's the number 2 wide receiver recruit in the entire country. So, that's life at some places. I do want to say this, that Illinois this year, supposedly defensively, they have 7 fifth-year seniors that are going to see playing time. This is supposed to finally be the year where, like you said, Troy, there are not going to be a lot of freshman, sophomore starters. I guess sophomore there are some, but just looking at projected depth charts, like quarterback will be one. I think that's the only one offensively. Defensively, I think there are none. Their kicker's supposed to be a freshman. So, I mean, this team is now more experienced. And the quarterback, he's a freshman quarterback in college football. He'll go through his growing pains. He's supposed to be talented. He is more of a dual threat guy. So it'll be interesting. And last year, to point out some good things that Illinois did, they were second in the Big Ten in rushing. Second. So they got better, I think, offensively. I would say that much. But defensively, they were atrocious a year ago. And so now, again, you're getting all these, seniors, fifth-year seniors starting supposedly, and it's like, okay, like as long as you're getting better. I mean, you can make the argument that a freshman, sophomore kid would be better than a fifth-year senior if the fifth-year senior is bad. I mean, so it's not all experience. But like Michigan this year is the most experienced team in the Big Ten. Just in terms of percentages, how it's broken down by class, Michigan is the most experienced team. And it just so happens that Michigan is now the favorite team in the Big Ten. So, I mean, the experience does matter. You have to have talent with it. But experience does help. Illinois is finally supposed to be experienced this year. Wide receiving core, that's supposed to be a huge question mark, which doesn't help your freshman quarterback, in my opinion. I think he's going to be doing a lot of running. I think this team's going to do a lot of its damage on the ground again. They return their top running backs, so I think it'll be ground and pound for the most part. But they've got an athletic quarterback.
Good old-fashioned Big Ten football, youngster.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. And you know what?
Yeah.
Lovie Smith, to be honest, Lovie Smith, just following his coaching career, that's really the kind of coach he is.
Right.
Good, solid defense, run the ball, control the clock. The problem is, this is where my concern is with Lovie Smith and his program. A defensive coach that coached at the highest level amongst men in the NFL can't go out and recruit 11 guys to play good defense because you gave them a compliment at atrocious. That's a compliment.
Here are their ranks last year out of 100 whatever D1 programs. Defensively scoring, they were 123rd. Rushing, 121st. Passing, 113th. Total defense, 127th. That's beyond atrocious. You're right.
Yeah, you gave him a compliment. Like that is just like, did you even show up and put anybody on the field?
Yeah.
Are you playing flag football?
Giving up over 39 points a game. I mean, good luck winning.
And to be honest, Kevin, in the Big Ten, which are not known, I mean, so you get these cupcake games and Ohio State puts up 70, right? But you look at a team like a Wisconsin and Iowa and Northwestern and a Purdue. These are teams that are okay offensively, but they're going to score like 25 to 30 points. You gave up nearly 40 points a game, and you're in the West. So, you got teams from the East that, in my opinion, Kevin, when you look at the Big Ten, the East and the West, kind of two different divisions. The East is more flair. The East has more, in my mind, offensive firepower, whereas the West is the more traditional Big Ten. And what I mean by that is running and good defense. And you look at Wisconsin, all the success they've had. Now we'll talk about them next week. But how has Paul Chryst done it? With the running game and great defense. That is old-time Big Ten football. And to me, that's what the West is in the Big Ten. So you're an Illinois squad in the West that is traditionally playing at least 6 games against traditional type teams. Well, Purdue's not. Purdue's going to be more of a passing, up-tempo team. But to give up nearly 40 points a game and you're a defensive guru, it doesn't sit well with me, Kevin. He's just not done a good job at Illinois, and I don't think it's going to get much better this year. And I honestly think you might see Lovie Smith gone after this year. I hate to say it. I don't know the guy personally, but I've always respected what he does. But this program is just like stuck in neutral. It's not going up. It's not going down. It's just on the same page year in and year out.
Yeah.
2 wins in the Big Ten, 4 wins overall. I mean, I don't think you can expect much more this year from Illinois.
Right. I think this year it'll be interesting to see a more experienced defense, more experienced team, a quarterback that can do things, really. So, I mean, if it doesn't happen this year, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Lastly, for Illinois, my last talking point here is their schedule. It's not easy. And none of these schedules will be easy because it's the Big Ten, but to compare it to other Big Ten schedules, it's not easy. For me, if I had to pick it now, I would say they go 4-8, and that is 1-8 in the Big Ten. So they're at home against Rutgers. I think they win that game. Otherwise, here's their Big Ten schedule: at home against Nebraska, home against Michigan. I mentioned Rutgers, home against Northwestern. Like Nebraska, Michigan, Northwestern, not exactly easy teams at home. And then on the road at Minnesota. They get Wisconsin at home too. At Minnesota, at Michigan State, at Iowa. I mean, loss, in my opinion. So maybe this team does get better, and maybe you do see flashes. And I know Lovie Smith had an extension. I think he had a 2-year extension a couple weeks ago. So, maybe in regard to that, it would surprise me if he got fired. But just record-wise, I don't think it's going to get better than 4-8 this year.
This is the wrong year to show. This is the wrong year, though, Kevin, to show, hey, we're getting better, and
right.
The wins aren't going to be there. That should have been year 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And there was no progression.
Yep.
So, yeah, you might say we're better and we only won 3 games this year. I don't think it's going to sit well with Illinois. I don't care if, and contract extensions, Kevin, mean diddly squat. The reason that was done is for recruits. I'm going to bluntly say that. The university is not stupid. They're not going to come out publicly and say Lovie Smith is on a hot seat. Because if you do that, you're not going to get your recruits.
Yeah.
So right. We give them an extension. The recruits feel safe. But I guarantee behind closed doors, they're sitting there saying, if this team doesn't win, I'm not talking about progression this year, youngster. This is year 4. And we've talked about it with every new coach. In year 4, that should be your breakout year. And if they went 500, okay, Lovie probably keeps his job. If they go 4-8 again, I think he loses it. I really do. All right, we can move on.
That was 14 minutes, about to be 15. So on to the next one, to Minnesota. I want to say this, too, that Illinois is definitely the bottom dweller for the Big Ten West. These next 5 all received votes to potentially win the division. In polls like, predicting the Big Ten winner, like polls that actually somewhat mean something, like credible polls. These other 6 teams that make up the division, they all had votes to win the division. So it is a huge step up from Illinois to the rest of this division. So it's not really fair for us to talk about the bottom 4 and then the top 3. It's not really broken up like that, in my opinion. It's really Illinois and then the top 6.
And you know what? I should give Illinois a little credit. They're not just going to roll over and say we're terrible. They're going to play, and they're probably somewhere in this season they're going to get a big win. It may be their only one, but they're going to get one. It happens every year in the Big Ten, Kevin. A surprise win somewhere. Rutgers last year. You're going to have a surprise. So let's move on. I actually get to talk about Minnesota this year. Woo-hoo!
Yes. Minnesota. So, again, much better outlook than Illinois. So last year they finished 7-6. They were 5-6 going into the season ender against Wisconsin, and then they blew out Wisconsin. It's the first time they beat Wisconsin in 15 years, something ridiculous like that. It had been a long time. And so Minnesota crushed Wisconsin to end last year. Minnesota last year started off 3-4, then they went 3-2 down the stretch, made a bowl game, won their bowl game by 20 points. So people like the direction that Minnesota is going. This is PJ Fleck's 3rd year now. So you're starting to see improvement, right? like you're seeing bowl appearances. They crushed Wisconsin at the end of last year. Like you're seeing improvement. And so that's kind of what we're talking about with Lovie Smith and not seeing improvement there. Fleck, I think at Minnesota, you are seeing some improvement. Team's not great, but they're not bad either, for sure. So offensively, defensively, just in terms of ranks, scoring, rushing, passing, total, that stuff, they were across the board. They were fine. They weren't great at rushing like Illinois was. They also weren't bad at anything, really. I mean, they were truly an average team. 3-6 in the Big Ten will speak to below average, but again, especially depending on the schedule, I mean, that can be murderer's row for 9 games. You may have one cupcake here, a favorable home game there, but life can be difficult. I'll just say that much. One thing to note with Minnesota going into this year, a few days ago, it was supposed to be kind of a battle for the quarterback spot. Zach Annexstad won the job last year as a true freshman, started like 7 games, then he got hurt, and then Tanner Morgan took over. And so this year, both went into camp healthy, and Annexstad is now out for the year with an injury as of, a few days ago. So the quarterback battle to see who would win that is now, it's all Tanner Morgan's job. But again, to say that Annexstad won the job last fall doesn't necessarily mean a ton, since it's Morgan's job now, and Morgan, again, he finished going 4-2 overall with this team. We saw improvement when Morgan was the quarterback. So it is definitely his job. He has started throughout this entire year. Skill position-wise, running backs, wide receivers, they're talented. They get back a bunch of guys. I think last year they had a ton of injuries at running back. I think they had, I forgot what it was, at media days. They talked about it for a second. Minnesota had it was at least 4 running backs have a 100-yard rushing game last year. It might have been 5. It honestly might have been 5. It was at least 4. So they've got plenty of guys to play at running back and to be successful. They've got wide receivers they have talent. They are older. It's a solid group. So I think offensively, Minnesota, you'll see something solid. You're not going to see crap. And it's Morgan's job. He knows it. It's his job for the whole year. I think maybe that'll be better for him, really, this entire season. Defensively, their defensive coordinator got fired halfway through the year last season, and then, again, the team got better. The defense got better. They started winning more games. So that's kind of all I have, really, for Minnesota as far as previewing, other than talking about their schedule more in depth. But again, you're seeing improvement here. The offense should be interesting. They've got some talent. They know who their quarterback's going to be for all 12, possibly 13 games, unless they, make the college football playoff, make it 14 games, something like that. But if not, they'll play 12, 13 games. And again, this is the team you're seeing improvement on. So it's going to be one of those middle-of-the-pack teams, so to say, that on any given Saturday, they could beat anybody in the conference. We've seen it the last couple of years with Ohio State. They'll lose to Purdue by 30, lose to Iowa by 40. And Minnesota will be one of those teams, along with the other 5 in this division, excluding Illinois, that, Minnesota could beat Ohio State by 20. They could beat Wisconsin by 30. They could beat Michigan by 20. They could. They're a solid team. They will be solid this year. Maybe they end up on top of the division. Maybe they will be where they were a year ago, and that's second to last. But Big Ten West just has a bunch of solid teams at the worst. At the worst, Minnesota will just be really solid. And so wins, losses, any given Saturday could go either way, to be honest. So before I get into their schedule, I'll let you talk for a minute, Troy.
Yeah, well, I'm going to make a little note on that. You got 7 teams outside, like you said, of Illinois. Sorry, Illinois fans, but you got to be real about where your team is. You get a team like Minnesota, Kevin, you're absolutely right. Could you see them on top of the West? Sure. Could you see them in 6th place? Sure. Could you see Wisconsin win in the West? Sure. Could you see Wisconsin at 6th? Sure. You look at these 6 teams, Kevin, and it just reminds me of a good old slobber knocker division. Like 500 if you're at 500 in the conference, you might be vying for the division title, because these teams, as we go through them, there is no standout team in the Western Division that is going to flex their muscles and say we can go 6-0 against the other 6 teams in our division.
Yeah,
there is 6 teams that can beat each other up.
Yeah, it's a 9-game conference schedule the Big Ten has, and the winner from the Big Ten West could be 6-3. Realistically, like 3 teams last year finished 5-4. They were tied for second. 5-4 in conference play, and you were tied for second.
Well, that's why it's so important, Kevin, inside the division. Like, if you want to win your division in the Big Ten, you've got to do well inside your own division.
Yeah.
So we're talking about Minnesota. So we look at Minnesota, and they're going to play everybody in their division, and that's where the division is going to be won or lost, because those wins and losses are so important when it comes to tiebreaker. Now, you're going to have your 3 games from the other side, but you got to take care of business within the division.
Yep.
Because, like you said, Minnesota could thump Wisconsin, and then Minnesota could turn around and lose to Purdue, and then Wisconsin, thumps Purdue. I mean, that's the way that this is going to work this year. I really believe, like you said, 6-3, that might be cruising to a division title, Kevin. 5-4, I mean, is going to be right there. You're going to be in the thick of things in that division. I don't see anybody running away with this. I know everybody's high on Nebraska, and we'll talk about them.
We'll talk about them in a few minutes.
Yeah, let's get real. Are they really the most dominant team out of the 7? No, they're not. If you want to say not even on paper, Kevin, not even on paper, they're not. Let's look at Minnesota, though, Kevin. I didn't talk about them at all last year. At all. There was the little, I thought it was bad luck for the Gophers, because I mentioned how I thought they played at home, and this happened when we were doing our locks. And I locked Minnesota, and I said, watch them take care of business, and they literally pooed the bed. Like, I believe they lost by like 28 points at home, and that's when I said I'm done talking about them. Done talking about them. But now that I get a chance to spout off about Minnesota, this is one of those teams, Kevin. Again, and I have to keep going back to old school Big Ten in the West Division. If Minnesota wants to win this division, they need to actually, and I'll say this not in a bad way, they need to take the ball out of Morgan's hands. And what I mean by that is he can't be chucking the ball all around the field. You might have good skill position players. The way that you're going to win in this division, play good defense, control the clock. And being a Wisconsin fan, I'll compare a lot of these teams that we talk about to Wisconsin. They've been near the top. I know Northwestern took care of business last year, but Wisconsin traditionally over the past few years has owned the division.
Yep.
You look at a Wisconsin team. How do you beat Wisconsin? How do you beat them? You literally got to keep their offense off the field, because they will just wear you down. Even though they got a good defense, you can wear Wisconsin defense down if you put together sustained drives. If you put together 10-play, 80-play drive and come away with at least a field goal, 7 would be preferable. But if you come away with at least a field goal, that's a 10-play, 80-yard drive. Then you go out, and Wisconsin's offense is nothing to write home about. I know they made some changes this year, so things are going to be a little bit different. But this is an offense, Kevin, that you can get to go 3-and-out just like that. So you get a 3-and-out on Wisconsin, get your offense back on the field, hand the ball off to one of those running backs that you have in the backfield, and boom, another 10-play, 80-yard drive. Now, Wisconsin defense is good, but the way you beat a good defense in any league, doesn't matter if it's Pee Wee football, high school, college football, you move the chains. You don't always go for the gusto. So my key to Minnesota this year, Kevin, Morgan needs to throw the ball less than they run it. And I know in society and everybody wants these big flashy pass plays, blah, blah, blah. but honestly, for Minnesota, they've got a really talented backfield, not just one guy. They can do it by committee. They've proven that. So you can go in and have a guy pound the ball in the first half. You can have a guy go in fresh legs in the second half. To me, that's Minnesota's key, Kevin. They've got to find an identity that we're going to pound the ball down your throat. Morgan can make plays if he needs to, but we're going to try to run the ball 50 times against you. And how can you do that? Defensively, I think they got to tighten up a little bit. As you said, they did it in the second half of last year, but They've got to tighten up, and they've got to get the ball back for their offense so that they're not playing from behind. I really look at this Minnesota team as a baby Wisconsin Badger team of a few years ago, because that's how the Badgers are built. They're built on the running game, never had a big-time quarterback after Russell Wilson, and they have good defense. So I think the key is that Minnesota defense has to rise to the occasion, make some stops, and then an offense has to control the clock. I know that's not what people want to hear, but, Kevin, you know me, I love watching ball control football, even if it isn't college football. I can get as much fun watching a long, sustained drive than a two-play 80-yard bomb. I just love football, and I love the old-school way. But, I again, this Minnesota team, I'm not making any predictions today. But like you said, they could be near the top or they could be near the bottom. And it might not be because they're a bad team.
Right, exactly.
You could be playing Iowa and lose by a field goal. You could play Purdue and lose by a touchdown. You could beat Wisconsin by a field goal. I think a lot of these games, it's going to be a competitive year, and I'm psyched up about it. I mean, I'm getting psyched up about a West Division where a team might go into the championship game 2 or 3 games over 500. They might be 8-4, or 9-4, or 9-3. That would be like a miraculous record in the West.
Oh yeah.
But it's going to be a competitive season in the West. I love it. Carry on.
Yeah, most competitive division in football, in my opinion. Doesn't necessarily have to be the best, but most competitive.
It's not the best. No. I don't want anybody to get us wrong. I don't want anybody going on Twitter or Facebook saying the old man and the youngster said the Big Ten West is the best division. No, there's a difference between best and competitive.
Yeah.
And when you got 6 teams, literally 6 teams that could win a division, that's a pretty darn competitive division in college football.
Yes, schedule-wise, unlike you, I have nitpicked the schedule and come up with kind of win/losses. If I had to pick it now, I would say 8-4. I think their schedule is not crazy difficult. I think Minnesota could be 7-1 after 8 games. There is nothing crazy difficult in those first 8 games. Like at Purdue, Nebraska at home, those are their 2 toughies, the first 8 games. Then after that, you get Penn State at home, at Iowa, at Northwestern, Wisconsin at home. Those are your last 4. So again, you could start 7-1, end up 8-4, something like that. That's how I can see it going. And from a Big Ten perspective, I mean, then you're looking at 4 losses in the Big Ten, so 5-4. It wouldn't surprise me at all. So schedule early is light. Schedule the last 4. That's when it's going to be really interesting.
The thing is, though, youngster, those first 2 games you mentioned, they could also lose them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
That's just how close it is.
Yeah. 15 minutes. Moving on.
They're not going to go into any of these games being a 20-point favorite.
No. No. So 15 minutes is up for Minnesota. We'll move on to Nebraska. The Huskers a year ago went 4-8 as well. 3-6.
And now they're a national championship contender.
Yeah, Heisman Trophy finalist, national title contender. That's basically what all the hoopla is. The most exciting.
I'm okay with the Heisman Trophy talk. I'm okay with that. He's a good player. I'm totally fine with that. But this bull hooey Nebraska all of a sudden going to be possibly playing in a national championship. What? I know what Scott Frost did in his prior tenure.
It's his second
but you're
year.
You're in the big freaking 10. I'm sorry. Have you looked around your surroundings to the other teams in your conference? You're not getting out of that conference unscathed. And the only way you're making it to the playoff is going undefeated, because you're not going to make it on ranking. If Nebraska loses one game, their playoff hopes are done. I'm sorry. There's just no way that one-loss Nebraska team is going to get in over a one-loss Alabama team, if Alabama has a loss, or a Clemson team. There's no way. And even undefeated, I suppose, if you go undefeated, that could be a little bit different story. Yeah. But I just want to squash this talk now. And if anybody put money on Nebraska going to the playoff, you could have just given me the money. Just give it to me. Because that is a really crazy bet. And if somebody proves me wrong, they prove me wrong. But I would say I'm 99.9% sure Nebraska will not be competing in the college football playoff. Carry on.
So, again, it's Frost's second year and his second year at UCF. They went from winless 0-12 to basically 500 to undefeated. So his second year they went undefeated. 2 years after they had 0 wins. That's part of it. Part of it here is the schedule. Part of it is Adrian Martinez, the quarterback, and how good he can be. I believe in him very much so, and I think that just hearing him talk for a few minutes, you can tell that he is a bright kid that has all of his teammates' respect and his head coach's respect. If you look at any quote possible from Scott Frost, it's basically he would die for the kid. So I believe in Adrian Martinez. I believe in Scott Frost. I believe in the offense. I know they lose their top running back. They lose their top wide receiver. So that'll hurt. But I believe their offense will be really good. A year ago, they were good, not unbelievable. The defense a year ago was not as bad as probably people think. It was bad, but it wasn't Illinois bad.
I'll say this, Kevin. It was bad when it mattered. When they needed to get a stop is when it was bad. Like overall numbers, not horrendous.
Right.
The thing is, they just never stepped up in the moment when they needed a big stop. When you need that play in a game, they weren't there. So they kind of let other teams control the game, and they couldn't come up with a big play or a big stop to change momentum. So that's where I think a lot of people get this bad from. But numbers-wise, I mean, they were what they were. I mean, it has to improve.
Yeah, they were a bad defense. That's what it was. Again, you lose your top running back, lose your top wide receiver. Your starting guards, your starting center, not there from a year ago. They get both their tackles back. This team, I mean, just overall, this team is, I mean, it's not as though they're returning everybody offensively and they're just going to be this unstoppable juggernaut. I think they'll be really, really strong offensively. They're not going to be impossible to stop. There will be games where they'll score 50 and it's like, damn, this is unbelievable. They're not going to do that to everyone. I think that's what probably some people think. I just don't see that being the case. Defensively, they've got a lot of experience coming back. But again, they were a bad defense a year ago. So you're getting everyone back, basically, but did they get better? That's the key, always. A year ago, they started 0-6, went 4-2 in the last 6. That's what people are hyped about. The games they lost even were close. I mean, they lost to Iowa by 3. They lost at Ohio State by 5. Even during their 6-game losing streak, they lost at Northwestern in overtime by 3. So a couple of the non-conference games lost by 5. So they weren't even getting blown out all the time either. But this team will be better than it was a year ago. The offense will be, I'm sure, better than it was a year ago. The defense got more experience. I'm sure they'll be better than they were a year ago. But like you said, does that mean 11-1 and upset Michigan? Here we go, college football playoff? I don't think so. So I'm with you there. Just to break down the schedule quickly, this is what really has a lot of people hyped up. And if I had to pick it now, again, to pick it today, I'd say they go 9-3 because game by game, it's hard to say, oh yeah, they'll lose that one, they'll lose this one, they'll lose that one. It's hard to, because they are at home against the tougher teams that they do play. So, I mean, they get Ohio State at home, Northwestern at home, Wisconsin at home, Iowa at home. Again, all those games are losable. They're all at home. So it's helpful. Road games this year, just on the schedule completely, at Colorado, at Illinois, at Minnesota, at Purdue, at Maryland. Maryland just lost arguably their best playmaker. At Purdue will be a challenge. At Minnesota will be a challenge. At Illinois shouldn't really be that much of a challenge. At Colorado, they should be able to beat Colorado. So, again, it's tough to go game by game and say, yeah, they'll lose this one, that one, this one. I mean, they should be 4-0 going into the game against Ohio State at Nebraska. That'll really be, I mean, if this team is really up to what people think, they'll be 5-0 and they'll beat Ohio State at home. That's when things will go through the roof, is if that happens. If not, then, you know, the next week they play Northwestern. That could be a loss. The following week they play at Minnesota. Again, not easy. So this team just in general has a favorable schedule. That's also part of the hype, is that you could see this team winning games because of the way their schedule is laid out this year.
So there's a downfall to that favorable schedule, though, Kevin. That's what I was talking about before.
Right.
If they want to play in the championship, based on that schedule, they've got to go undefeated. If they lose one game, let's say it's Ohio State,
yeah,
even if they win the Big Ten championship, beating Ohio State, that's what, one quality win?
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
That's why I don't understand the hype, and I don't think they're beating Ohio State. Right. They're good. They've gotten better, but I'm not passing this throne off to Nebraska that they're just juggernaut in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Martinez is good. He deserves to be mentioned as a Heisman candidate. Yes, but I've known a lot of Heisman candidates in the beginning of the season that don't live up to the hype.
Yeah.
He's good. He's a playmaker. But guess what teams now have on him, Kevin? 1 full year of tape. And you're not telling me that Paul Chryst isn't in that room watching Martinez play by play, tendency by tendency, to know exactly what's going on. Now, his athleticism will help him out. But you've got to remember, as a freshman, there's a lot of unknown when you're playing against other teams. Kind of like being a rookie in the NFL. There's just nothing there. And you might have some instant success. But now it's a year later, and these coaches have already watched hours upon hours of film to look at your tendencies. So people want to say Nebraska, 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 Nebraska. And I want to say, you win 7 games. That's a good season for you, Nebraska, because you're in the Big Ten. I know you're saying 9-3, Kevin, but you mentioned the first 4 games that they have, the 4 games they have at home. I say 2-2 would be a hoopla party if they can go 2-2 against those 4 teams.
Yeah.
And they do have to go on the road.
Right.
If this team is 7-5, Kevin, I'm not going to say they're a bad team, and I wouldn't say it's a disappointment. I think they're a 7-5 team this year. Mm-hmm. Because defensively, they're an average defense. So you've got an electric quarterback. If you keep the game close, put the ball in his hand at the end of the game, maybe you can go down and win the game. But I am not anointing Nebraska the Western Division champion. I think they stumble a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not buying into the hype. I think they're a middle of the pack. Now, the one thing, we just talked about it, if they go in the Big Ten, if they go 5-4, They might be right there in the division title hunt near the end. But they're not going undefeated. They're not going to have 1 or 2 losses. I think they're going to be in the pack with everyone else. 6-3, 5-4, 4-5. There, pick one. That's where Nebraska is going to finish. Not even sniffing the college football playoff. Could they sniff the division title? Sure. As I will say with every one of the teams that we're going to talk about in the West from here on out. That's all I got, my friend.
Fair enough. We'll move on. It was a shorter Nebraska segment than the other two, but regardless, we spoke our minds. That's Nebraska football. Moving to Iowa, the last team of the day. Next week, we will talk about the top 3 from the Big Ten West, Northwestern, Wisconsin, Purdue. We'll close out this show with Iowa, who finished last year at 25th in the country. A year ago, they finished 9-4. Kind of a classic Iowa record, in my opinion. 5-4 in the Big Ten, just like basically everybody else. Last year was Kirk Ferentz's 20th. We have our thoughts on Kirk Ferentz, and both Troy and I, we're not going to get into it right now, but both Troy and I are more skeptical of Kirk Ferentz as the head coach at Nebraska, at Iowa, I think, than most people are. I think, again, 9-4 just sums up Iowa to me. And they could be Wisconsin on a consistent basis, but they're not. They're always a step below. Once every 5 years, once every 8 years, they'll have that team that goes 11-1. But in the end, the other 7 of 8 years, they're 9-4, they're 10-3, they're 8-5, and it's just like, They're always above average. They're always around the top 25 or in the 20th spot, but they could be more. That's always my issue with Iowa. Anyway, a year ago, defensively they were really good. They lose a lot of those defenders. They returned 4 defenders from a year ago, 1 in the front 7. Like their front 7 defenders, they only returned 1. They had a
big loss.
Yeah, they had a lot of good guys a year ago that left defensively from a team. I mean, to talk about ranks, like 11th scoring, 12th rushing, 17th passing, 7th total defense. They were better than I thought before looking at the true numbers. Defensively, they were really good a year ago. That's what kind of saved them a year ago. But again, they still went 5-4 in the Big Ten. So losing 6 of your front 7 defenders, that will hurt. Offensively, they were very average a year ago. Nate Stanley's back at quarterback. Their top 3 running backs are back. That'll help you, obviously. But defensively, you'll take a hit. You lose 2 first-round tight ends, T.J. Hawkinson, Noah Fant. You also lose your top receiver on the outside. So offensively, I mean, I'm sure they'll be fine, but they're not going to be good. And defensively, I'm sure they'll be good. They're not going to be as good as they were a year ago. I mean, again, this is an above-average, solid team. just like what Minnesota is going to be, just what I think most of these teams in the Big Ten West are going to be. Only other thing really that I have is talking about their schedule. A.J. Epinesa is a guy that a defensive end who played a lot a year ago. He's really good. So to say they'll have no D-line talent would be false. But the team's defense won't be as good as it was a year ago. The offense, they'll be fine.
It'll be another Iowa year of offense.
Yeah.
I mean, when has Iowa offense been flashy, Kevin?
No.
You got to go back. Way back.
Yeah, and not even necessarily flashy. Like Virginia basketball offense last year that won the title, they were second in efficiency in the entire country. But not flashy. You can be really good, not flashy. But Iowa's never even fantastic offensively. Again, once every 8 years, they'll have a really good offense. They'll have a good quarterback with a really good running back, a really good wideout or tight end, good offensive line. They'll be really good offensively, like 1 out of every 8 years. But again, this is just another year where they'll be fine.
No, and that's why you could see Iowa win the West, or you could see Iowa finish in 6th. Now, I know I sound like a broken record, but really, if you're listening in today, just think about the teams we talked about. Illinois, okay, they're not going to finish near the top. Boom. Just erase them. Just erase them. Put them on the bottom. If you look at the other teams we talked about, is Iowa going to dominate Minnesota, Kevin? Maybe. On any given Saturday, you could.
They could lose to Minnesota by 20, or they could beat Minnesota by 20. Or it could be a field goal
Or
game.
It could be a field goal game.
Yeah, you have no idea.
Because these teams are almost mirror images of everyone. I mean, so far the teams we talked about, the only superstar that we can mention is Martinez.
Right.
And like I said, he's a good player for Nebraska. But I'm not 100% sold that Martinez is going to lift that team on his shoulders and carry him to 20-point wins. I just don't see it. And now Iowa, it's all about team philosophy. That's a Kirk Ferentz thing. It's a team. It's a good team, a solid team. Like you said, we're not going to get into our thoughts on Ferentz. But this is an Iowa team that's going to finish between 7 and 9 wins. It's almost a given.
Well, and I'll say this. Very quickly, if I had to pick their schedule, I went and game by game 6-6, just based on what their schedule is. But carry on, Drew.
And then there you go. I mean, you say 6-6, maybe they sneak out a 7th win somewhere.
Oh yeah,
but
for sure.
Could they go 9-3 again? They could.
They could.
Because these teams in this division, you've got 6 games within the division. But honestly, Kevin, if you would throw schedules at me and just say, okay, here we go, I could go through the schedules a million times. And one time I could have Iowa at 9-3. Then one time I could have them at 6-6 like you have them. I could have them at an 8-4.
I know.
There's no dominating team in the West. And to me, I think that leaves the door open for one of these teams to say, screw you, old man. Screw you, youngster. Watch us go. And maybe it's Nebraska because they have the best quarterback in the division.
Right.
Maybe. Maybe it's Nebraska. But we've noticed, especially in the Big Ten, you can win with average quarterback play, a.k.a. Hornibrook.
Yeah.
So Wisconsin can win with average quarterback play. The one thing that a lot of these teams are lacking that goes into winning a division title, Kevin, is defense. You just talked about Iowa losing 6 out of their front 7. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. You don't replace that. Can you maybe wait, tread water for a little bit till these guys get up to speed? Maybe. But then before you know it, you got 3 losses.
Right.
So there might be some acclimates that are needed for that defense. These guys getting ready to play week in and week out, being a starter. But they could step in there game 1 and not miss a beat. That's why it's so hard to determine which one of these teams is going to come out on top of the West.
Yeah.
And I'll let the cat out of the bag. The teams we're going to talk about next week, I don't think any of those teams are dominant either in the division.
Right. Yeah. The way we broke this show up this week, next week, it doesn't make much sense. But that's just the way we have to do it.
We have to do it in lieu of time. I mean, we could do a 5-hour Big Ten preview show, but nobody will listen for 5 hours.
Yeah.
Hell, they might have turned it off already. I don't know. We know people listen, though. We see the numbers. Yeah. People listen. They listen to all the archive shows, too. Well, I'm going back, and I look at Iowa. They always will have a competitive team, Kevin, even when their talent level is low. I will give that in Ferentz's credit. He gets his team motivated. He gets his team to play, gets his team to be competitive.
Yep.
The beef we have is why hasn't he been done better in Iowa? Why hasn't he? And again, that's a different topic, different show. We're talking about the 2019 team. I will know this, Kevin. Every Saturday they play, that team will be ready to play, whether it's on the road or at home. They're always competitive. Look what they almost did to Penn State. Fully out-talented by Penn State and almost knocked them off the perch right away. I mean, this is an Iowa team that parents can get motivated to play no matter what his skill level is. So that's something that Iowa can say we have in our corner, and that's something Iowa can say in this West Division, is that we have a coach that is in tune with the program that can get his kids to play no matter what level the talent is. And that can be scary. Could that lead to a 6-3 conference record and division title? It could.
Yeah.
But talent-wise, they could be 3-6 and be in sixth place.
Yeah. The best part about this team is you get your quarterback back as a senior. Your top 3 running backs are back. I also didn't mention their offensive line. It should be really good. Like their offensive line basically all comes back.
That's a given at Iowa, Kevin. Though they're like Wisconsin. You want to play offensive line, you go to Iowa or Wisconsin. I mean, that's the way it works.
Yeah. So this team really, if Nate Stanley doesn't make mistakes, and as a senior and third-year starter, he shouldn't, and you get your top 3 running backs back and you have a good offensive line, this team could be really tough to stop and really tough to beat offensively. It just really all comes down to the defense for me. Schedule-wise, my last point, at Michigan, at Northwestern, at Wisconsin, at Nebraska, and then even home games, like they're at home against Penn State, home against Purdue. There's those 6 games, they could go 0-6.
Yep.
Really. So, we'll see. But this team's schedule is harder than a lot of other Big Ten schedules. I'll say that. At Michigan, at Northwestern, at Wisconsin, at Nebraska, that's
tough. Really tough. That's just the way the cookie crumbles with the scheduling. I mean, that's just the way it works.
Yeah. So, those are their 4 Big Ten road games. They get 5 home ones, 4 on the road, and those are their 4 road ones. Hard. So, we'll see what happens, but that's all I've got.
So my one key for Iowa this year, Kevin, is the same key as Minnesota. Your best defense is your offense controlling the clock.
Yeah, I agree.
And again, the theme that I've had outside of Nebraska is old school Big Ten. And maybe since Nebraska is the outlier, maybe that leads them to a division title.
I think Nebraska, Purdue. Yeah, Nebraska, Purdue are more open spread style type of team. The other teams, not as much.
But it could also come back to haunt them.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's a catch-22 with that. But I mean, Iowa, their best defense is going to be a ball control game plan, and you hit it on the head saying Stanley can't make mistakes. When he's asked to make throws, he's got to make the throws, and he can't turn the ball over. Yep. And you got to get those 3 running backs involved. And, Kevin, you look at the college game, and you look at the teams that dominate. I mean, you got, and I'm talking nationwide now. Yeah, you got your great quarterbacks that toss the ball for 300 and some odd yards. But if you look at the really successful teams that are winning week in and week out, they're usually as a team running for about 200 yards a game.
Yeah.
If you go back and look at the top 10, there's a couple outliers there that have those.
Literally just look at Clemson and Alabama the last 4 years. The last 4 years they've played each other in the title game. And Clemson and Alabama are great running teams that can also throw. They're balanced, but to be able to just smash teams' mouths in and just run up, with your offensive line that half of them are going to be in the NFL and your NFL running back, that's a killer. And then you have a good quarterback play on top of it. So just those 2 teams, they're always balanced. They've got superstars, but they're balanced regardless.
Yeah, and it all starts in those quarterbacks, Kevin. I don't want to say they have it easy, but you and I both know that when you establish a running game and you can get play action in college, wow, that is a lot better than play action in the NFL. And that's why I go back to this. The teams that can run the ball are the teams that are going to have success. And that's why I look at Nebraska, Kevin, and I know we're done previewing. So every time you talk, I get more thoughts and more ideas. And now I'm like more pushing Nebraska down lower in the standings now, because okay, you got Martinez, he's a dual threat, you can run the option, right? Okay. I've seen teams stop the option cold. I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
If you gave Martinez a good running game and he can use some play action and rollout, then you're talking, okay, maybe I can buy into 9 or 10 wins.
Yeah.
But if you're just keying on Martinez and you're just keying on the option, I've seen too many college teams on Saturday, Kevin, shut down the option. I've also seen a lot of teams get just throttled by it.
Right.
But if you have a competent defensive coordinator and you have a few players on defense, you can handle the option. You might give up some yards, you might give up some points, but you're not going to get throttled and thrashed by it every time they run it. And when I look at the defensive coordinators in the Big Ten West and in the Big Ten overall, I think they can put together a game plan. The majority of teams, Kevin, in the Big Ten have good defensive coordinators and good defense. So the outlier there in Nebraska, it could be good. I'm thinking it might not be so good, though, because you're not going to have that ultimate threat of play action. And if Martinez had that, maybe then I start thinking double-digit wins. That's all I got.
Yeah, same here. Next week, Northwestern, Wisconsin, Purdue. Just those three. So maybe we'll tackle into them a little more, given time for only 3 teams as opposed to 4. But, again, Northwestern, Wisconsin, Purdue to wrap up the Big Ten West Division next week.
I just want to reiterate, we are not previewing these teams in any ranking of order. Like, we're not saying that, well, outside of Illinois being last.
It's just based on
we're both set on that one.
Yeah, it's the standings last year. I'm going from the bottom up. Standings last year in the division. Yeah. That's all it is.
All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the show. For the youngster, I am the old man. You can find us on Twitter at Youngster Old Man. You can find us on Facebook at Youngster Old Man, and we also have a website that has all of our shows, youngsteroldman.home.blog.
There you
check it out. Anything else to add, youngster, before we let these wonderful listeners go?
That's it. I can't wait for next week.
All right, we'll get back at you next week, people. Same place, same time. Have a good one.